Everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm just going to give a few more minutes for folks to come in, and we'll get started shortly. If you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat option at the bottom, and we'll be taking questions at the end. For those of you just joining us, I'm going to give it about 3 more minutes to see if there's anyone else, and we'll get started. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahela Begum. In case some of you guys don't know me, I've spoken to most of you been on meetings with you, but if this is the first time you're seeing me, I'm the program director for the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund, and I work with Restore America's Estuaries. And so this webinar is about the full proposal requirements and grant writing for that. So congratulations for making it to the second phase. Super exciting. And so we'll get started. Some of you guys have already reached out about the recording. So this is all recorded, the slides, and the recording will be available before the end of this week. Started. Okay, so I just wanted to review the timeline before we spoke about the more detailed things. And so the full proposal is due on March 15th at 4 p.m. And by April 2024, mid to late April, we'll notify you if you've been awarded, if you've been selected to be awarded. And then in May, we'll have 2 in-person award announcements, one in Connecticut and one in New York. And the dates and location for that is still to be determined. So stay tuned for that. On June 2024, we're planning the annual learning exchange, which will be in person. So stay tuned for that as well. July 1st would be your project start date. July 31st, 2025 would be the completion of work. And final reporting would be due on September 30th, 2025. And a lot of this information is also in the full proposal guidance document that I shared with you. So I'm just highlighting that here as well. And so with your full proposal invitation, you also should have received a link from me. It's the same link that you use to submit your LOI. Since you've been moved to the full proposal stage, you would just continue the application from that point. And I would highly recommend that you start the process or at least log in earlier rather than later. So in case you have any technical difficulties, we can assist you on that end. And again, when you first log in, you should be able to see your application, and then also similar instructions, making sure that any communication is on your safe sender list. Always recommend doing a printer-friendly version so you can see the questions beforehand and using a document, Google Docs or Microsoft Word to put your answers there so you kind of have it saved somewhere. And then as you're going through, you can save and finish later. Just make sure that you hit save. Okay. So I wanted to focus in on the different sections of the full proposal. A lot of the elements are the same, so I wanted to focus in on some of the things that are different. Applicant information, so the name of your organization, if you are the project leader or the fiscal agent, any contact information that's changed. So since submitting the LOI, if you had staff turnover or different people took this on, this is where you can update that information, change emails, phone numbers, things like that. Organizational fiscal information, for the LOI, you didn't need a SAM number or a UEI number, but for the full proposal, you would need one. And this is just to guarantee that we can submit funds to your account once you get awarded. And I recommend that you try to do this sooner rather than later because it could take some time. And so if you need assistance with that, EPA's WEAC's Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, or TICTACS, is offering support with SAM registration numbers. And they're doing 2 workshops every month until April. So some of the dates that are upcoming is next week on February 1st, February 14th, 28th, March 13th, March 27th, April 10th, and April 24th. I also sent you the Zoom registration link in the email for this. They were supposed to do it on the 31st, but they changed the workshop to February 1st now. So if anyone needs support on this, they can provide one-on-one support on getting the UBI numbers and getting you all set up. So the full proposal application continued. For cost information, the amount of requests stays the same. There's one thing that is different, which we ask is assistance with upfront costs to get started. Understanding that LISCIF is a capacity building grant, a lot of organizations don't always have the upfront costs to get their project started. So we just want to know if you would need assistance with that. And this is something that we're trying to work with EPA, called the Working Capital Advance, which will give you the upfront costs for up to 2 months. And then from then on, it'll be a reimbursement basis. And we can speak more on this once you get selected. It would just be a written requirement of you indicating your need for these funds right away and what you would be using it towards. And then also your organization's annual budget. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't mention this before, but if you have any questions or comments, please hold it till the end. You can submit it in the chat or the Q&A and we'll get to you shortly. Okay. And then we have section 4, which is the project overview. A lot of this is the same, except that this will give you the opportunity to elaborate more. So the word limit is increased. The name of your project, description of your project is 250 words. List of partner organizations with description of roles, 500 word limit. So really kind of indicating who all the key partners are on this proposal and what are their roles and kind of listing that out. Okay, section 5, it continued for the project description, your problem, the LISCIF program priority. This is a checkbox that you are going to indicate which priorities you're targeting, the impact, alignment with the CCMP, stakeholders, work plan. And this is also where you get to go deeper into all these elements, especially your work plan. So indicating the months, the dates, as much detail as you can provide throughout the year or duration of the grant. Outreach approach, area of work, area of direct impact, project team, real estate controls and permissions. So you're just indicating if you are allowed to do this project, and then you would attach the permissions at the end of the application. And then also if you would need a quality assurance performance plan. So just kind of thinking that through, if you think your proposal will require one. We will contract a contractor to help assist in template building and kind of assist you with that in case you need one. Okay. Section 6, these are the required uploads. So any maps or images listing coordinates of exact locations. Some of you guys in your proposals, you had multiple locations. So just being a little bit more specific where, and also I know a lot of the reviewers left comments on people's maps and other comments. So this is an opportunity for you to integrate all of those. Your proposal budget. So it's really important that you use the template that was provided to you by Ray. And that can be found under applicant resources on our website. And the reason why you should use that is because that has all the federal regulations and how it should be. In case you need assistance with the budget, please feel free to schedule a call with me. I'll be more than happy to kind of go over those things. And then for the difference for the full proposal is that you have a budget narrative. And so you might have seen with your invitation email, that's one of the things that I attached. And that gives you the opportunity to explain your budget a bit more and justify your costs, what you would need things for. Whereas the budget, you don't have a lot of room to indicate that. For the budget narrative template, that's an excellent place to explain more. And then any letters of support, the LOI didn't require any, but if you are naming partners, if you are naming people who are going to support you in this project, this is where you would attach those letters of support. A project impact model, which I'll get to shortly. And if a lot of you were on the first webinar, you might know what I'm talking about here. Your certification signature, this you already have from your LOI stage, so you would just attach that again. And then if you indicated that you do need real estate control and permissions, this is where you would attach those letters. And then any optional attachments, a lot of you reached out during the LOI phase. If you could attach photos and extra documents, this is not a requirement, but if you would like to add any other supporting documents, you have the option to do so as well. Okay, and just to go over some of the resources that are available, you have the full proposal guidance document, which is not uploaded on the website because this was invitation only. You should have received an email from me with a PDF indicating everything that I've really highlighted in this webinar. And then the comprehensive conservation management plan is under applicant resources on our website. The CCMP implementation actions, any supplemental documents indicating those implementation actions, and then the webinar and the slides from our first webinar in September about case studies of impact models and implementation actions. The full proposal scoring and evaluation rubric is also updated on our website, so you can see how we will be scoring this. The Excel budget template, and the budget narrative template as well. So for the project impact model, this application requires applicants to complete a brief project impact model to identify expected project results based on established LISCIF performance metrics as indicated in the CCMP implementation actions. And this just allows RAE, EPA, and the LISCIF review committee to see the alignment that you have with your project and the CCMP. And the specific pages that you can see the examples of this are on page 15 to 19 on the LISCIF project case studies, examples of impact models and implementation actions. And so basically you would show your project name, the funding priority that you are targeting, the CCMP funding theme, the project impact, at least one correlated event or impact, and then a relevant implementation action. So just to look at a few, these are from the document that I mentioned on the previous slide. Rainwater garden swales, if this is your project, the funding priority that you would be targeting, right? Projects that result in quantifiable pollution prevention or reduction. The CCMP funding theme this would fall under is clean waters and healthy watersheds. The impact would be to redirect excess rainwater to garden spaces, reducing stormwater runoff and removing pollutants in the sound. And the implementation action this would most closely match up with is WW35, or assess sources of pathogens and nutrients and work with communities to abate or alleviate those sources. And you might have multiple funding themes or multiple implementation actions. I would just pick one that kind of is comprehensive and captures most of your project. And so another example is shellfish aquaculture and restoration. The funding priority would be projects that foster a diverse and balance and a diverse, balanced, and abundant population of fish, birds, and wildlife, with the theme being thriving and abundant wildlife. The impact for this would be to increase populations of oysters, clams, scallops, with the implementation of a shellfish management plan, which also supports coastal restoration efforts. And this matches with implementation action HW1, complete projects that result in restoration of coastal habitat. And so you don't have to do it exactly like this, but we would like to see, like in boxes and arrows, how it kind of aligns your project with the entire CCMP. And then
And Shahila,
example, oh
they
yes,
can just do something like that in a Word document, right? Or
yep, yeah,
Publisher.
I
Yeah,
did
so
this
not super.
on PowerPoint slides.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
cool.
have to be colorful or anything, just a simple diagram, just so we can see the connection. Um, Protecting piping clovers, so this would be public engagement, knowledge, and stewardship. The theme would be sustainable and resilient communities. The impact would be increased public knowledge on piping plovers, their nesting grounds, habitat, and various shorebirds. And this supports implementation action 18, support and encourage informal education activities on Long Island Sound. And then finally, communicating water quality reports and findings. So this would target data management and integration projects. The theme would be sound science and inclusive management. Effectively communicate water quality findings using environmental indicators and reports to educate diverse communities on the health of the Long Island Sound watershed. And this matches with implementation action 34, refine and communicate information on the Long Island Sound ecosystem and watershed using environmental indicators. And so I provided an example for each project impact model. It doesn't have to exactly be this way, but as long as you can show that alignment. And if you need support on this, please feel free to hop on a call with me. I'll be more than happy to assist you on this. And then we have some upcoming technical support webinars. If you go to our website, they're listed, future webinars. The next one is on fundraising, which is on February 15th from 2 to 3. And then we will have a grants agreement and invoicing webinar in sometime in May, and then program implementation in July. And then, of course, we'll have the annual learning exchange in June, and we'll have some in-person trainings there as well. And I'm also available similar to the LOI phase. If you need to get in a call with me, or, if you have any questions on your budget, or, any of the questions in the full proposal phase, please feel free to schedule a call with me. My Calendly link is also in the full proposal guidance document as well. And then also, most of you have my email address already or my phone number. Feel free to reach out. I'll be taking questions at the end. I want to give a chance for Connor to go over the grant writing for the full proposal document. So I'm going to stop screen share, and I will introduce Connor, and then he can start as well. All right, so I wanted to introduce Connor. A lot of you guys, if you were at the first webinar for grant writing, you might already know him. For those of you who are joining, because some of your colleagues couldn't make it, Connor Yakaitis is the development director for the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, a statewide environmental nonprofit based in Hartford. He has been there for 4 years and has written and secured countless grant proposals at a variety of funding levels, from a few $100s into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. He also developed the organization's 4-year strategic plan that outlines the vision, goals, and mission of CTLCV's work. His prior experience includes working for a number of political campaigns where he both fundraised and helped shape their respective campaign platforms. He volunteers as the fundraising coordinator for Jericho Circle Project, a Massachusetts-based nonprofit dedicated to trauma healing and the successful re-entry of incarcerated citizens. And for those of you who will be joining our webinar on February 15th, it will also be Connor doing the fundraising portion. So I'll turn it to you, Connor.
Thank you so much, Shahela. While I share my screen, just wanted to say I've sat on a number of grant webinars, for the application process in the past, and this is by far the best one. Very informative. So hello, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my slideshow here. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. So yeah, it's great to be with you all again. I'm excited that, we're at this stage of the application process for you all. I know you've put on a lot of hard work. putting together your LOIs, and now it continues to the full proposal. So as Shahela mentioned, I've written countless full proposals, a variety of levels, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And after taking a look through all the materials that they've provided you, don't be intimidated. It can be kind of a scary thing, especially if you're a smaller organization. But hopefully, through this slideshow, and I'm available as a resource as you go through this process. You should all be able to put together fantastic proposals. So I'm reiterating the dates again. Make sure to take notes of those. If you want to put them in your Google calendars, you can never be reminded enough about key dates. I prefer myself to put Google Calendar alerts, have, my phone buzzing a week, 2 weeks before they're due, just to make sure you don't miss any of them. I put for the deadline, March 15th at 4 p.m. I recommend that everyone also put a calendar alert for March 1st. That's not obviously required through this program, but just to, at least 2 weeks out, in my personal opinion, and probably even before that, you really should have a first draft written. I find it's easiest to, have everything written and then constantly kind of go back. You hear the old saying, sleep on it. I know I certainly, after a good night's sleep, wake up and want to make a million different changes to my proposal. So just that's a recommendation, obviously not a requirement. And then you have the rest of the dates here that Shahela referred to. So I'll start off for those of you that were at my last training on a letter of intent. I figured I would start off by just kind of comparing a letter of intent versus a full proposal. And let me I have a quick pop-up here that's need to get rid of. Okay, let me go back. So your letter of intent should be considered as, your general outline as you think about your full proposal. It's, definitely the best document to refer back to as you start to think about how you're going to put this all together. And while we talked a lot last time about storytelling and your vision and, making the emotional connections with the funder, your proposal is more, the getting into the weeds of things. Your letter of intent was intended to really capture the funder's attention, as they start to kind of go through candidates and narrow down the list of people they feel that should, or organizations they feel should apply for funding. Your full proposal is really going to convince them to A, fund your work, and then B, how much are they going to fund? I just change this real quick. Sorry, my apologies. There we go. So this is where you really get to sell your ideas. You started broadly with your vision, and now you're going to talk about that in more more detailed about your organization's history, why they're qualified to take this funding, and your experience. So you really never want to, skimp out on the details. A good proposal should really highlight the need for your project in your community. It should provide a historical context. So even if you're a new organization that just started out over the past couple of years, maybe you don't have, decades of experience doing this kind of work. That's okay. You should really, your organization started for a reason, and you should be able to provide some historical context, maybe not so much about your organization, but about your community after you've highlighted that need in the community. And we can't emphasize this enough. We want to make sure you all highlight environmental justice in all areas of your work. So throughout the entire proposal, you should always, that's kind of, while there are 4 themes, that your projects may highlight when it comes to environmental issues, really environmental justice is like a theme that overlaps everything. We like to consider it as kind of a lens that you should see all areas of your work in. And when you're typing your proposal, you're talking about, the good things that your proposal and your staff can do to really make an impact. Make sure you use we and us rather than they and them. It not only kind of highlights kind of the teamwork of your organization, but it also, by saying we and us, it makes the funder feel included as part of the work, because they most certainly are. Make sure you provide a timeline for the work being done. It really depends on the scope of your projects as to, in terms of how detailed you're able to make that timeline. I would say start off, very broadly. I prefer to start timelines backwards. So start with, that July 2025 when the work is done. Like, what do you want to see? And then what are the steps to get there? You'll start off quarterly or monthly. It's really up to you, but make sure you provide a timeline so that the funder can see, okay, over the next year, which is, a long time, even though it can go by fast. Where are the different areas where, you as an organization are holding yourself accountable to look back on, the past month or the past quarter and say, look, these were our goals and here's where we're at. And maybe you need to adjust a little bit accordingly. That's okay. But providing a timeline is absolutely critical for your proposal. Don't be afraid to highlight partnerships. That's strongly encouraged. The general rule of thumb is the more the merrier. Funders really like to see that you're working with other organizations or other entities, other people, because it really is a group effort, as we all know, to achieve the goals that we have. Provide long-term sustainability for the projects. So even though this grant cycle, as it were, is a year, what are you hoping to achieve, in 5 years and 10 years, and how is this project play a role in that? A funder wants to see how they're, it's easy to put just what you're going to achieve in the timeline that you provide, but a funder is really, to maximize their investment, wants to see how does, this project contribute to the long term. And be sure to provide metrics for success. How will we measure our impact and the funder's investments? So, there's all kinds of metrics depending on what your project is. And someone that's considering giving you money is going to want to see those metrics. And those metrics may change throughout the course of your project. So don't be afraid to, make adjustments as you move along. Now we get to a good proposal should not. It shouldn't be too wordy. And while, we're talking about comparing it to the LOI, it certainly is more wordy than the LOI. You want to provide lots of details, but don't overwrite just to fill out the word count. I don't know about you all, but this is something I certainly did in like middle school and high school. If a teacher, said, oh, this has to be 3 pages, sometimes it's easy to find yourself just kind of rambling to make it count for 3 pages. You don't want to do that in this case. You certainly want to strive to fill out that word count. But if you make it too wordy, it can really cause some confusion and it might actually detract from your overall message, which you certainly don't want. And then a general rule of thumb, this is probably one of the golden rules in fundraising. Don't ever overpromise. Don't inflate your project's capabilities or your organization's capabilities in the hopes of receiving more funding. Maybe there's some, you meet with your staff and there's some really good, in a perfect world attainable goal that you want to reach from this project, but you're not sure if you can make it. Well, don't mention that goal if you don't think you can make it. It's always better to come back to the funder at the end of this grant cycle and report on things that you actually didn't expect to be able to achieve, because that will help you. Maybe there's another funding opportunity from this funder or another funding opportunity from a different funder to be able to have this track record and say, look, we promised that we would do A, B, and C, but we also did, D, E, and F. That's never a bad thing. And then thirdly, don't omit required elements outlined in the proposal guiding document. Always make a checklist. Make sure, go through. I know there's a lot of information in the guidance document. Make sure you have a checklist and that you're really, a project of this scale and a funding request of this scale. There's a lot of different little details. And you want to make sure you're, double and triple checking that to make sure you're providing everything that is being asked. And then certainly don't complete this last minute. Believe it or not, funders can always tell when proposals are done last minute. So make sure you prepare in advance to ensure you can anticipate any questions that might come up during the application process. So that's, why I gave, a minimum of at least 2 weeks before it's due. You probably want like 4 weeks before it's due to have something drafted. But you definitely want to make sure you're, hitting the ground running, starting off early, having plenty of conversations, with your staff, any other stakeholders to make sure you really can provide the best and most refined proposal possible. The question often comes up, how much should I ask for? As a development director, I just always say that if you're able to make it work, always ask for the maximum amount that a funder is willing to give. But with that being said, don't just ask for that amount and not have, the details, the information, and the capability to, actually spend that amount. Always make your budget scalable. Funder is going to want, if you're asking for $50,000, you want to be able to say, look, we can do this, this, and this. And for the additional 50,000 for $100,000 investment, we're able to actually, expand on our work and do this, this, and this. So don't be afraid to make sure it's always wise too to say, we absolutely need $50,000 or this project can't take off. If you say that and they're unable to give you $50,000, you actually risk maybe not getting anything at all. So always make sure that whatever project you're doing, you have a very kind of scalable model to that. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to highlight partnerships and other sources of funding. Funders very much like to see that, they're not alone in this endeavor and they're part of a broader investment. So even if, another organization isn't maybe supporting you monetarily, but you're, having communications with them, ask if they'd consider being, a partner. And, not necessarily so they'll receive funds from this, so, the funding is going to you, but make sure the more organizations and stakeholders you can provide, the better it looks from a funder's standpoint. And then clearly explain why the funder's investment is needed and exactly what it will produce. Highlight long-term impacts. Again, the longer the benefits last and the more, tangible results they'll produce. That will just further elevate the funder's willingness to give, and in addition, not just give, but to also maximize their investment. And then it also never hurts to do your due diligence and do some research and find out what other projects the funder has supported. If you're able to read through anything, very often it depends on the funder, but very often there is information available about previous years' investments and what those projects have done. Look into that, and you might find that you relate more than you would initially expect with a previous funder, and that can only benefit your proposal. So now that you've completed your LOI, you're probably trying to, asking yourself, well, where do I begin? So first, if you haven't done so already, be sure to read all the documents provided with this funding request. Shayla provided me with everything, and I was going through the website, and there's definitely a lot of information, which is fantastic. It might take some time to read through it all, but make sure you have a clear understanding on the scope of work that the funds are being offered, to ensure that you understand the funder's mission. So even if, if you've just read the stuff that's specific to this grant, it might behoove you to read, more on the website and just find out about the mission and then some of the work that's been done by the funder. Make sure you meet with your team to discuss your organization's capacity to carry out the project. So brainstorming sessions are always encouraged. Don't be afraid to ask yourself, what are our limitations? Are there areas where our organization can grow throughout this project? A funder would love to hear about that. Love to hear, the differences between the organization before you got this funding and after. And then how will this project elevate the organization's long-term goals and your strategic plan? I know there are organizations of varying sizes, on this call and through this process. Maybe you don't even have a strategic plan right now. That's okay. But it's something to think about, like, what are our long-term goals as an organization, and how will this project help us elevate? Determine an application timeline. So, we talked about timelines earlier. You certainly have to provide a timeline for this application, but also come up with your own internal timeline. Assign roles to your various staff members. Even if I don't know if you're all development and fundraising people on this call, maybe you're executive directors or just staff. It doesn't necessarily, if you have multiple staff, I think it's a great team building exercise to have everyone play some sort of role in this application process. And then also identify supporting documents to help elevate your case of support. I know you can attach documents on this, and we'll get to that in a couple of slides. But some of those documents may take time to get, and you want to make sure you incorporate that into your timeline. If there's a report from another organization, that would be, just kind of a great attachment for this proposal. it might take some time to get permission from that organization. So just be cognizant of all those little, things that might play into your timeline. And then, the best place to begin is to begin drafting. Take the questions and requirements from the application. And as Shahela mentioned earlier, I personally prefer to do Google Docs, Word docs that are shared with my staff so anyone can add comments, and take all of the bits of, when you log into the application portal, take all those little bits and throw them into a Word doc. Most of the questions, there's a word count. I actually recommend, even though I said don't be too wordy, but in your initial drafting stages, actually just don't be afraid to be wordy. Because if you're in a Word doc, you can take that and just refine it once you have a first draft. You can refine that down to fit the parameters of the word count. And then stick to the key themes. That's kind of the final, which we'll get to on this slide. So as Shahela mentioned, and as you've seen on the website, the 4 key themes are clean waters and healthy watersheds, thriving habitats and abundant wildlife, sustainable and resilient communities, sound science and inclusive management. You might find that your project covers elements of different themes, and you can highlight that in your proposal. It's encouraged to probably focus on one theme in particular, but I'm sure there are other elements. And then try to look at your project through the lens of the 3 other themes, if you find you're only at one, because you might be surprised at how much crossover there is. And then be sure to remember that environmental justice is an overarching theme on all of these. So just continue to hammer away at that EJ. It's incredibly important, in the environmental communities, and just as a whole, it's many nonprofits and movements. Equity and justice plays a very, very important role in all of that. Then be sure to schedule a one-on-one meeting. As Shahela mentioned, she is available to do that. I absolutely always, not just for this funding opportunity, but for whatever other funding opportunities you might be applying for after this, always schedule a one-on-one appointment with a representative from the funder. It's a great opportunity to brainstorm ideas and the vision for your project. You can ask questions and also encourage the funder to ask questions as well. Sometimes on your project, you may not consider what questions the funder may ask after you submit. So it's a great opportunity to kind of workshop that. Anticipate questions that may be asked after you submit and be prepared to answer them. If you submit your project and a funder calls back after you've submitted the project with questions, don't panic. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It means they're interested, and it's not that you put together a bad proposal that didn't cover everything. It's just, that they are, interested to some degree. So it's always good to anticipate those questions so that hopefully you cover them in your proposal, or if you didn't, you are prepared to answer them afterwards as they make their decisions. And then also I would encourage, when you schedule a one-on-one, maybe it's a 1-on-2 or a 1-on-3 with Shahela, if that's allowed. But to include some other members of the team that would help implement that project. It's always great to put, a name and a face as you're doing your proposal. So when they look, they say, oh yeah, I met this person who's going to take this part of the project on our one-on-one. And it'll help the funder understand the various roles of responsibility, and just adds a little personality to your organization as you apply. There's no such thing as too much communication with a funder during the proposal process. At least in my opinion, it's always good to be in contact with them throughout the whole application process. And if you have any questions whatsoever, especially as you're drafting, in my opinion, there's definitely no such thing as a stupid question, unless there's something like, oh, how much money can we apply for? That's like very clearly on the, shy away from those questions. But any other little technical questions you might have, it's always good to reach out and ask. As I mentioned before, supporting documents. I encourage everyone to always include supporting documents and include as many as you can. They really can't hurt your project proposal. And the more interested, that a funder is to fund your work, the more they're going to go through and, continue to ask questions and read supporting documents. They can provide in-depth data that maybe you're not able to highlight in the proposal because of word counts and because you're really trying to focus on kind of the broader goals of your project. And you don't want to dilute your main message. Well, supporting documents can help with that. And as you're thinking of what kind of supporting documents could I provide, think about case studies that may be, have been done over the years in your area of the project you're applying for, similar projects that have been done in the past. Maybe there are news articles or essay articles about the problem you were trying to solve, polls and surveys, perhaps. There's no shortage. I've actually submitted grant proposals before with a link to a documentary about some of that prison work Shahela mentioned. And they watched it. The funder actually watched it. So, just kind of think outside the box. What supporting documents could I include so that if they're really interested in funding my work, they have a better sense of what we're trying to achieve. And then also try to include letters of support. In this case, it is required. So reach out to other organizations that you work with. Maybe you have board members who are involved in a number of organizations that might be able to make a phone call and get a letter of support. It really just furthers your credibility as an organization, especially organizations that are smaller or maybe newer and who are looking for that credibility. Finally, we get to submitting your proposal. Always submit your proposal before the deadline, even if it's, on the deadline, which is March 15th. Include well before 4 p.m. to avoid any technical issues. And be sure to have a backup method of submission. I have run into several times issues where my laptop won't work or the Wi-Fi is not working, or sometimes, with grant submission databases, sometimes it's on their end and you're unable to. So just really make sure you plan ahead and you're able to confirm, with hours to spare, maybe preferably days, that your proposal is submitted. And when you do that, it never hurts to email the proposal's contact. So, send Shahela an email. Hey, look, I just wanted to confirm that I submitted my proposal and make sure you got it. And in that email, I would recommend that you make sure it's clear in your proposal, make sure it's clear who your organization's main point of contact is for any follow-up questions or maybe requirements or anything else that might come up as they are in their decision-making process. And also, it never helps to thank the funder again for the opportunity to be considered and maybe reiterate your vision or goal in 1 or 2 sentences. So, hey, Shahela, thank you so much for letting us apply. We really feel this proposal will help us achieve 1, 2, and 3. We'll look forward to hearing from you. And don't be afraid to follow up with the funder regarding the status at an appropriate time. So probably not wise to the next week be like, hey, did you guys decide yet? Just make sure you're cognizant of the funder's timeline, but it never hurts to ask. I hope things are going well, and just wondering where you are in the decision-making process. But just give it some time according to their timeline. A funder will almost always contact you, regardless of if your proposal is accepted or not. Out of the many grants that I've applied for, I think, probably at least over 100 grants at this point. I think maybe only like 2 or 3 just never got back to me. They almost always say, look, we're thrilled to support you. Obviously, they will contact you if they're supporting you. But even if they're not, they typically will reach out. And if for any reason you're ever not accepted for any grant that you apply, it never hurts to also, maybe schedule a follow-up and you might get some really important feedback. So always think about, when you're thinking about this grant proposal, it never hurts to think about the next ones as well from either, this organization or many others. And that is all I have. So if anyone has any questions, I actually can't see the chat right now. I will stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Connor, for an excellent presentation. Anyone has any questions or comments, they can put it in the chat and it'll come through. Give a few minutes for people to write their questions. And while you do that, I also wanted to share a post-webinar survey, just to let us know how this was.
And I'm going to put my contact info in the chat too for everyone. And feel free to reach out, phone or email or anything like that if you have any questions as you draft your proposal.
So Shahela, we do have a question in the question and answer section. It says, can you explain a little more about knowledge sharing event?
Maggie, which section are you asking about for
I'm
that?
guessing it's the learning exchange that you mentioned.
The annual learning exchange? Yeah, that'll happen in June. And with LISCIF, we plan to do that once every year, where all the sub-awardees gather together, whether it be in New York or Connecticut. And we come together to learn from one another, but also do in-person trainings that folks vocalize that they want in person. And so it's just a way to kind of network and strengthen the ties in the region.
And that is just for awarded
It's
folks.
also open to others, but we're prioritizing sub-awardees. Yeah. We'll have a registration link once we get the dates settled in, locked in, and then we'll that'll give us an understanding of like how big or how many people show up.
And
Okay,
a few other questions. Yeah.
I see another question from Carmen Glenn. I have a question about what is the most effective information to be included in a letter of support.
Yeah, I can answer that one. Maybe not the real estate letter because I've actually never dealt with a real estate letter before. But for the letter of support from another organization, if there's any other work that you've done with those organizations, I think it would be important for them to refer to that. Just refer to some of the projects that you've been able to do that organization has seen. Maybe the qualities of the staff, the effectiveness of the staff to be able to carry out this proposal. I think is all really important.
And coming at it just from administrative side, if you are going to have other funding, like if a partner is going to be offering funding and you have a letter of support, that's a good place that I've seen it included quite often. Some of the obvious stuff, like the title of your project, sometimes, things like that get forgotten, but yeah, so as much information I think as they want to share is great. But yeah, the more details you can give us, the better. And I don't know if I can answer the real estate letter. It really comes up if you are working in areas where there's either private landowners or, the city owns a park or something like that. We just want to know you have permission to be doing the work there. If you need permits or, if it is a private landowner that they submit a letter saying, yes, I know this organization, I give them permission to do this work on my land. Things like that, because we've had projects fall through in the past where they had like a verbal agreement and then the landowner pulled out and the whole project was tanked. So we just like to know that you have actually gone and talked to these folks, that you're going to be doing the work on their land. Again, whether that be, the city knows what you're doing or you're not just putting in an application and then hoping they'll let you do it after the fact. So yeah, again, just it's really for us to see that you've gotten out there, you've talked to your partners, you've talked to the folks who owns the land that's going to be doing the work, and that we know that you've done that and that you're not just waiting until after the fact and hoping they say yes.
Thanks, Sarah. And Carmen also asked if partners are included in the letter of support. Yes, they should be. So for the LOI, if you've listed partners who are assisting you in this project, playing key roles, please have them submit a letter of support so we know that it's legitimate, that everyone is in agreement for your project. We have a question from Krista. Should we still budget to attend the RAY conference? I didn't hear that mentioned in this meeting, but it was part of the LOI. So that isn't a requirement for the RAY conference. We do plan on having some of our sub-awardees speak about their projects in the region, which is why we said to include that, but also it can be other conferences that you're also attending. If you're doing like a youth leadership, youth training, and it would be helpful for your youth to get that, that's also one way to kind of budget that in. So it's not a requirement. If you wanted more funding to go solely to your project, you can shift the budget that way. But the grant would cover conference costs and things like that and lodging. Okay, and I think Phoebe has her hand up. I'm gonna allow you to talk. Let's see. Okay, Phoebe, you should be able to come on, Mike. See your hand up.
It popped up by itself somehow, so sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Okay. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free.
I'm sure I will eventually, but I know how to get in touch with you, which is perfect. Thank you all.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes, please. I'm available for one-on-one support. I haven't met with all of you yet, but if you have any questions on the comments that reviewers left, or you want something elaborated, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call as well with you. Carmen asks, is there a significant youth component to the Ray conference? Should we plan to bring youth? Is there a date? Yes, if you go onto our website, the date is I believe October 6th that week in Washington, D.C. The registration and things like that are still in the progress of being planned out. The only reason I brought the youth component is because some of our proposals are targeted about youth engagement and EJ and education. And so it depends on the relevancy of your project. But really, the Ray conference is going to be a meeting on a national scale where folks are kind of sharing research and just coastal management and projects. And because Ray manages several funds throughout the country, it's different organizations also presenting on their work. So if you are an organization who is trying to build capacity and become more established, it is a good way to network with others. But again, that is not a requirement. You don't, if you do not have the capacity to attend, you don't have to. But I probably will be asking some sub-awardees to be presenting on their projects in October. And I'll be reaching out to you about that.
And I would just add, Shahela, it is usually geared towards professionals, young professionals. There's not a huge, if any, that I saw at our last conference, like high school or down kind of age students. It doesn't mean there can't be, but there wouldn't be anything like specifically like breakout sessions for them, or now, they could network, but there probably wouldn't be a lot of maybe other people their age. Just because that hasn't been something that's happened in the past, it doesn't mean it can't. So
we are open to it though, because this is a unique grant for environmental justice. So there were a lot of budgets that integrated that on just development and youth development, having youth as speakers and engaging community to be able to be the leaders of what they're doing. So there is room to kind of go into that a bit more, even though if Ray hasn't done it previously. And I think that's also one thing that's super unique about environmental justice, is that a lot of the times in the environmental world, when we do these projects, we don't engage community and we don't engage the folks that are directly impacted. So this is a good way to do meaningful, transparent work and having that leadership shown throughout intergenerational work. So that's one thing that I hope that with a lot of the proposals we get to see with our sub-awardees. But we are almost at time at 4:28. I don't think we have any more questions, but if anything comes up, you can also contact Connor or me or Sarah for budgeting related things, and we'll be more than happy to jump on a call. This will also be uploaded to our website along with the slides. Thank you so much for attending this afternoon.